Hi everyone, thank you so much for clicking on this video. Today we are doing my first Xenoblade X video, aside from the video where I showed the server shutting down. These are the biggest mistakes that a new player can do in Xenoblade Chronicles X. So the first one is going to be never switching classes. So what is the problem with never switching classes in Xenoblade Chronicles X? Well, Xenoblade Chronicles X is a kind of a different game when it comes to classes. Because of the class system being you start on a knife and then you can choose whether you're a full metal jaguar or if you go to a duelist path, you have multiple branches that you can choose. And with it, you have different weapons that are tied to those classes along with arts and skills. Now, what does that mean for you as a player? Well, it basically means that if you want to, for example, start your game playthrough as a duelist, which is the longsword class with an assault rifle, you will end up not being able to use, for example, dual guns. In this case, and this is why this is one of the biggest mistakes that a new player can do, is that in theory, if you want to combine these weapons, you can actually do that. So, for example, let's say you want Ghost Walker, but you also want Blossom Dance, which was a very popular build in the original game. In this case, you would have to max out the Duelist class, you would have to max out your Full Metal Jaguar class as well, and then you'd be able to mix the arts for both classes. Now, there's different things that classes also do. For example, if you choose one class over the other, you can have more stats for a specific thing, or you can have more skill slots in case you choose the starter class, the Drifter. I think it's the Drifter. Maxing out all the classes in the game is going to give you a lot of versatility. It's going to give you a lot of things, and it's just going to help you. So whenever you're playing through the story, try to actually start out with some other classes that you might not like as much, so you can max it out, and eventually you're going to be getting every single class and mixing them all up in order to get the best art sets and the best builds you can get. Now, another mistake is not changing your party members. So in Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, your party members will have shared experience. This means that even if they're not in your party, they will still gain levels. So you don't, for example, finish the story with a level 45 character, and then you have a level 1 NPC that you've never used in your life. So all of them have shared experience. However, having a character in your party is very good for you as the player because you develop affinity. By developing affinity, you will be able to gain access to these special quests that are going to give you eventually really good arts. For example, Blossom Dance. To get Blossom Dance, you need to get to a high affinity level with Nagi, so he's going to give it to you. It's one of the best arts in the game, and it's really useful, so I definitely recommend having multiple characters during your playthrough. Don't just stick to one. Try to always explore and try to find all of the recruitable characters, which Xenoblade Chronicles X DE is definitely going to have more of. It's already confirmed. Now, another mistake that a lot of people did when they started their playthrough of the original game was ignoring the heart-to-heart quests. So just like how I mentioned it before, getting heart-to-hearts is really good. It's even mandatory to progress through some of the story chapters. It was on the original game. I'm pretty sure it's going to be the same in DE. So don't ignore heart-to-hearts. Do them as soon as you can because you might just unlock a really useful art for your character that's going to maybe help you survive for longer or dish out more damage. So really do not ignore those heart-to-hearts. They're very important. There's also a quest in the game inside of your barracks that allows you to farm more affinity with other characters. If you're really in a rush to just use the characters that you like, try to max out your affinity with those characters. Do it by doing those quests. It's really important, and getting all those arts is going to be an amazing experience for you as a player because it just gives you so many choices of builds and so many other things that you can do with them. Talking about heart-to-heart quests, there's also side quests. Do not ignore side quests, all right? I can't tell you enough how important side quests are to your Xenoblade X experience. When I first played the game, I actually didn't really do any side quests. I just did like the mandatory heart-to-hearts. I did some mandatory or some side quests that I thought were easy, but I never really gave it much of a thought. However, when I wanted to 100% the game, which I eventually did, I noticed just how much the world feels alive. So try to do all of the side quests as soon as you get them, because these side quests in Xenoblade X, they're so important. They make your NLA, they make your city develop. They make other characters join your party. They make other characters even join the city. So it's really, really important to be doing them. And on top of this, when you do the side quests, not only do you get more characters within your city, but you also unlock more AMs. For those who don't know, AMs are arms manufacturers. They are really, really important. They're basically these companies that throughout the game you donate miranium to, and eventually they will be releasing new weapons, new gear, a lot of really good things that are very, very useful for your playthrough and even for late game grinding and also end game grinding. For example, the Candid Incredible AM, they are really, really important because they basically manufacture treasure sensor gear for you, which increases the drop rate of really good items. So it's really good to farm with. So please, please, please do not ignore side quests. They're incredibly important. They're extremely important. And they just add so much more personality to a lot of the characters and a lot of the kinds of characters that you're going to meet throughout the game. Now, moving to the next big mistake that a lot of new players actually did, me included, it's not actually looking into the augment system in Xenoblade X. So you're going to unlock augments in your weapons, and these augments can be not just your weapons, but it can also be in your armor. They're not going to be just some random stat buffs that you're not going to care about in the main story. You can get all sorts of augments, and that means that you can get damage reflection, damage nullification, you can get more weapon attack. You can get, for example, things that will boost your Core Crusher skill, which Core Crusher was a very popular skill in the original game where it allowed you to deal extra damage to basically a monster by nullifying the damage you deal to limbs, which they always take. Some of them might be weak points and they take extra damage. You would basically end up dealing so much damage to the limbs that it would nullify the damage to the limbs and convert it to raw damage on the monster as a whole. It was a really popular build, and I think it's very, very important for you guys to look into those augments, because those augments are going to really make a difference, especially when you stack up the level 20 augments with each other. They're going to make such a big difference during your playthrough. If you get the level 20 ones, but not even the level 20s are just the relevant ones. All of the augments are really nice. They're really cool to have during your playthrough, and they're probably going to help you grind a little bit faster during your endgame phase. So you should really just get as many augments as you can into your main sets of gear, and then from there you should just develop them. I think that would be really good. So please keep an eye out for augments. You're going to unlock them pretty early into the game, actually, and a lot of people end up not using them. Another mistake that new players generally did in the original game was not checking the FN site's probes and getting the miranium storage probes. So there's a huge thing in this game where you have to build your own miranium probe routes. So what does this mean? Basically, when you get a probe in Xenoblade, you're going to install it on an FN site. What this means is that you can change, for example, a probe from a basic probe to a storage probe so you can hold more miranium. Miranium is basically like, let's call it a currency. It's like a sort of currency that acts as gas or fuel for your scales, and it's also used to expand your augment slots and some other things. So what you do with miranium is you should be getting more storage units so you can store more miranium, so whenever you run out, at least it's a lot harder for you to run out of because you will be having a bigger storage. You want to make sure that you have probes that, for example, boost your research or boost your mining. So at the end of the day, you're going to be able to get a lot of miranium, and you're going to fill up those boosted or those larger miranium storages. So in the end, you'll be just making a profit. You're going to become like a CEO of fuel at the end of the day, and that is really cool. It's going to give you a big advantage whenever you have to refill your scale, because your scales are actually going to run out of fuel. They run out of fuel with every art that you do, and they run out of fuel just by you driving them around. So you should really check on the miranium storage probes and on probes in general, so you make sure that you're maximizing your profit throughout your playthrough. Now, here's a big mistake that I think a lot of people did, and it took a while for people to figure out in the original game. So going into DE, you're going to have this information, and it's going to be really good. So a lot of people asked what potential is. In the original game, when the game got released, no one really knew what potential was for. What kind of stat was it? Well, potential is a stat that literally just scales your TP art. So for example, you see that when you're playing the game, you have normal arts, and those arts can like charge your TP, and your TP acts like as your mana. However, there's some arts that basically have TP right next to them on the icon, and those are the ones that spend TP to be able to be used. So what happens with those arts is that they don't actually scale off of your melee attack or ranged attack. They actually scale based off of TP. So let's say if you want to make a build, let's say a Photon Saber melee build, you should not be running any TP arts, because you're not going to be getting potential as your main stat. You're going to be getting melee attack as your main stat. So your TP arts are going to be kind of useless because they're not going to be doing any sort of damage. However, if you want to run, let's say, a build that focuses on Executioner as an art, or it focuses on Blossom Dance, you really need to have really high potential, because your Blossom Dance or your Executioner, they are going to scale off of your potential. It doesn't matter if they're melee arts or ranged arts, they will always scale off of your potential. So you really need to be using potential in the right way for your main character, for your ground character, because I think potential works a little bit differently for skills, but potential is really important for your main character, for ground combat. It is really important for a lot of builds, and you really want to know the difference. Another mistake that people do, it's not that big of a mistake, but it's kind of a curious thing. It's that melee or ranged attack up augments, or even traits in weapons, they are a lot better than weapon attack up. So if you want to build a melee or a ranged attack build, you will want to use melee or ranged attack up traits or augments, not the weapon attack up. So please keep that in mind. You really want to use a specific kind of stat. You don't want the general weapon attack up. If you use the general weapon attack up, you're going to be losing out on damage, and that's really not what you want, because in Xenoblade X you deal so much damage, and some monsters have so much HP that it's actually insane how much they can tank. You really want to be, I'm not going to say maximize your damage, but you at least want to have the general stats well enough so that you can kill most of the monsters in the game, or else you're really gonna struggle with some of them. So I at least recommend you, if you're a new player, to check your traits in your weapons, in your augments, and if you get a weapon that says melee or ranged attack up in the traits, and then you have another weapon that says weapon attack up, and you're kind of confused, oh, well, should I use weapon attack up or should I use melee attack up? Well, melee or ranged attack up is a lot better, so please use that instead. That is really important for min-maxing and some other stuff. So if you wanna be that kind of player, then that's really good for you. Now, the last mistake that I'm going to be talking about, since I want to be doing a video about rookie mistakes, right? New player mistakes. The last mistake is the misconception that levels are important in Xenoblade X. They're not really that important. I'm going to tell you that it is possible to kill a lot of really big tyrants, really strong tyrants in Xenoblade X in the original game, just being at like level 10 or level 5. It is possible. Your stats are going to matter way more than your level. Just because Nintendo increased the maximum level in Xenoblade XDE, it doesn't mean that levels are going to be all of a sudden really, really good. Stats played a huge role in the original game, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be the same in Xenoblade XDE, where if you have good stats, you can basically kill anything in the game. I really, really want to reinforce that, because if you have, like, let's say, these augments are parts of your stats, the augments that I spoke before, they're part of your stats. So if you have, let's say, these gravity nullification augments, then no gravity damage is ever going to damage you, right? If you were, let's say, level 60 against a level 13 monster, you would always take gravity damage. But with the augments, it's going to be completely nullified. So I think that raw stats are much, much better than just levels in the game. Please keep that in mind when you're struggling with a monster, a tyrant, anything. If you're struggling in any part of the story, it's probably better to just check if you have new arts, new heart-to-hearts, new things that improve your stats, new things that you can tweak your build with, instead of just farming levels. Farming levels is not really that good in this game, and I don't think it's going to be in DE either. I don't think they would change that much about the game, so just keep that in mind. And with that, this was my first Xenoblade X video. I hope you enjoyed it. These are some really kind of early game. Some of them are not super early game, but they're like mid-game tips about what to keep an eye out in Xenoblade X when you're going on your first playthrough. I think it's really important for you guys to be aware of some of these things, just because Xenoblade X is a really confusing game for a new player, and it's also a really peculiar game in the franchise when it comes to stats and when it comes to the gameplay. I think it has the best gameplay in the series, but it can be tough to get into and actually know the ins and outs of it. So I really hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to give a like, comment if you found these tips useful. Now, a big mistake that I remember doing when I was playing Xenoblade X for the first time was actually selecting the option to take all items whenever I got drops from a monster. It didn't matter if it was a low-level monster and I was already level 60, pretty much at the end of the game. I ended up taking all the loot that I could, and honestly, Xenoblade X has an insane inventory space. It has 999 slots for both armor and weapons. But at some point when I was grinding for in-game gear, I realized that I didn't have more space. And what happens with your space after it's completely full, it's that stuff starts getting sold, or it needs to be sold automatically. And that happens with materials too. But with materials, it's a lot better because you do see their quantity while you're selecting them for them to be in your inventory. When it comes to gear, you don't really see that. And I actually filled up all of those 999 slots for both armor and weapons, and I had a really big issue because I spent a long time trying to actually, sell all of the armor that I didn't need and all the weapons that I didn't need. So I think a big mistake that you end up going to be doing is selecting take all items. It's going to be a huge time loss after you're actually in need of space. So please clear out your inventory, or at least choose items and choose the materials. The materials auto sell once they're level 99, once they're at 99 quantity. And with the gear, you just press sell all once you've selected the materials, and then you sell the gear, and it's completely fine. It doesn't take that long, and I hope that actually helps you sort out your inventory a little bit more, because I know that I needed it and I had no one to tell me. And I will be streaming my entire playthrough of Xenoblade X on Twitch, so please give me a follow. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye. Oyasin.